Hello everyone, this is Highlander from MTG Cardsmith doing another custom Magic the Gathering card review. Today we're reviewing a card by our friend Hergusbergus. He hasn't been around for a while. Excuse me. So yeah, nice to see a returning face who's been gone for a while. I did enjoy Hergusbergus' last card, so let's see what we got here. We've got Succumb to the Pages. This is a 4-mana instant. Okay, interesting. An instant transform card. 4-mana instant at rare. Draw 2 cards, then discard up to 2 cards. Excuse me. If you discard 2 or more cards this way, put this spell onto the battlefield transformed. So many novels, so many stories, enough to alter a man forever. Book Sifter. He's an alien now. A human horror at 3/4. Flying. Whenever Book Sifter deals combat damage to an opponent, they mill that many cards and you draw a card. Okay. So this is interesting. So this is a flip card instant. So, okay, let's go through a couple scenarios here. So you could just play a 4-mana draw 2. Not particularly good, but you could. You could draw 2, discard 1. I don't know why you would do that. That seems a little... I guess maybe in some situations you might want to put something in your graveyard, but most of the time draw 2 is going to be just better. I guess unless you're playing like a Reanimator style deck. If you discard 2 or more cards this way, put the spell onto the battlefield transformed. So if you draw 2, then discard 2, so you get to filter, and then you flip it over to Book Sifter. And this is essentially a 3/4 flash flying. That when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2, discard 2. And then whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, they mill that many cards and you draw a card. This card seems very strong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a rare. So, I mean... definitely a much stronger card if you discard, generally. In general, right? So let's just think about limited for a moment here. So in limited... You have this in hand, you draw 2, you discard whatever you have too much of, which is good. And then you get to flash in a 3/4 flyer and block a creature. So you have gotten a 2-for-1 already, despite the fact that the draw 2, discard 2 doesn't go up cards. Now you have a 3/4 flyer, and if they don't kill it, every time you hit them, you draw a card. I'm not too worried about the mill there. You're going to kill them before you mill them out, I think. But you draw a card. So basically, if you're able to flash this in and block something, and it stays alive, it's equivalent to draw 2 cards, except it's better because you get something in play, and. So you have board presence, so you're getting the same amount of value, but now you also have board presence essentially, rather than a card, 2 cards in hand, and then you have the potential to continue to get value through the 3/4 aspect. So, I mean, very strong card. I think that this is a pretty interesting idea, these spells that flip into creatures. I think that this particular one, so it's also, I think, fairly flavorful. I don't quite get why like him reading books turns him into like an alien. I would maybe expect like a madman or something, but whatever. I think my main okay. Before I get to my negatives, I quite like the card. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool card. I think it's a strong card. I think it's a nice little rare. Um, Here's my small issue with this card, which is that this side of the card seems just so much better than the other side. And what I mean by that is this card gives you a choice, right? It's either draw 2 cards or draw 2, discard 2, get a 3/4 flash flyer, whenever it deals combat damage, mill a card and draw a card, right? It's like, which of those would you rather have? Well, 90% of the time, you're going to pick the Book Sifter, right? I think the only time you would ever consider Succumb to the Pages without transforming it is like maybe you're playing Constructed and you're playing like, I don't know, against somebody that you know has a lot of removal. So in that case, maybe the draw 2 cards is better. But, because otherwise, so if they have like very few creatures and they have a lot of removal, then playing this guy is essentially going to 1-for-1. Although you still get to draw 2 and discard 2, which, is of course some value there. But, they're going to kill your guy and then you'll kind of move on. Whereas draw 2 is maybe slightly better in that case. But it's not even clear that it's that much better. So, yeah, I think what I would really like to see on something like this is like an actual choice here, right? Because currently, like, this isn't much of like. Basically, the way this card is right now, it might as well just be a 3/4 flash flyer that when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2, discard 2, and then it has this additional text right here, right? It might as well just be that, because you're almost never casting this as just a draw 2, right? So I would prefer, I think, let me say this. I think a stronger design would have incentives on both sides, right? So, for example, maybe the Book Sifter doesn't draw you a card every time it hits. That's a good start, right? Because as it stands right now, you potentially will get way more value out of Book Sifter. The thing is, like, draw 2 for 4 is pretty bad, right? It is instant, which is nice, but it's not it's not a good card. Okay. Now a 3/4 flash flyer just by itself is a better card, I would say, in almost every circumstance, unless you're playing like a Spells Matter deck or something, right? Because you can potentially get the same amount of value out of it, and you're also going to be able to start attacking your opponent, and you get a body on board, right? So I would really prefer a card like this to have a strong spell side with a weaker creature side, right? Because like that sort of gives you more of a choice of what to do. So, for example, let's just say, for example, like this was a sorcery, so that that's a big part of it too, is that this is an instant, so you sort of are potentially getting that extra value out of blocking with your flyer, So like let's say that this was like a 3-mana sorcery. It was essentially divination, right? Draw 2 cards. Then discard up to 2 cards. If you discard 2 more cards this way, put the spell on the battlefield transformed, and then it turns into like a 2/2 flyer or something like that. I mean, granted, in this case, we're kind of out of rare territory here, right? We're sort of more into common uncommon territory, but just kind of hear me out here. That's now a little bit more of an interesting card, right? Because it's like, well, on the one hand, you have a divination, which is going to be good in some circumstances. It's going to be better than a 2/2 flyer in some circumstances. And in other circumstances, you're going to want the 2/2 flyer. Because you're going to want to attack your opponent, you're going to want to block something, you're going to need that board presence, right? And you're most likely not getting the extra value of the additional card, whereas again, sometimes the divination is what you want. So like in that situation, I kind of like the design a lot more, because then it's like, oh well, this is essentially a modal card, right? It's like I can either do this or I can do that. And I think that is a space that you would want for this type of a card. Whereas, again, I'll repeat myself. Currently, it's like this is just what this card does, and you kind of ignore this half of it, right? So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this card. I like the idea here a lot. The idea is very cool. The like instant the spell transform thing, I think is great. But I just think that this could have been executed a little bit better, for the reasons stated. So, but I still like the card. I still think it's very cool. I'm gonna give this one, I think, a 7 out of 10. I think it's. I think if the choice here was more interesting, I would probably move up to a like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 even, or potentially a 10 out of 10. I mean, it could certainly get there depending on how it was executed. But as it stands right now, you look at this and you're like, okay, forget this old man, give me the alien, So yeah, 7 out of 10 for this card, but I think there's a lot of potential here. I'd love to see you play with this space some more. I think so like often what I do when I find sort of these interesting mechanics is I'll just sort of play around with it and make multiple different cards at different rarities, and just kind of like see how much depth there is in a mechanic like this. Because some mechanics have a lot of depth and some don't have much depth. This one seems like it has a good amount of depth. So it might be fun to create various cards that do similar things, and you might end up with a pretty cool result. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for submitting your cards, Hergusbergus. I'll see you guys next time.